In the world of Soul Land 2, the Peerless Tang Sect, every character carries a story etched in pain, growth, and destiny. Among them, Huo Yuhao's life is one of the most tragic and inspiring. Behind his calm and determined gaze lies a heart that has endured the harshest cruelty, betrayal, and loneliness. All because of the man who should have been his greatest protector, the Duke of the White Tiger, Dai Hao. And so, when the moment came where truth could have bridged the chasm between father and son, Huo Yuhao chose silence. He didn't tell Dai Hao who he really was. Instead, he entrusted that revelation to Dai Luoli, his younger half-brother. To understand why Huo Yuhao made such a painful decision, one must return to his childhood, a childhood steeped in darkness and despair. Huo Yuhao was born to Huo Yuan, a gentle maid in the Duke's mansion. She fell in love with Dai Hao, and from that love, Huo Yuhao came into the world. But love in the world of nobles was a fragile and dangerous thing. The Duchess, consumed by jealousy and resentment, saw Huo Yuan and her son as stains upon her dignity. What followed was a long period of humiliation and torment. Huo Yuan endured everything in silence, choosing to protect her son rather than seek revenge. Yet despite her patience, the pain eventually consumed her. She died tragically, leaving behind a young boy who had lost everything: his mother, his home, and any belief in family. For Huo Yuhao, that was the day his heart turned cold, and his hatred toward his father took root. He didn't hate just because his father had another wife, nor because his life was filled with suffering. He hated because Dai Hao never came, never looked for him, never saved them. Even if Dai Hao had been busy with the affairs of war and politics, even if he was unaware of the full extent of the cruelty within his own mansion, Huo Yuhao could never forgive him. To Yuhao, being a father wasn't about power or prestige. It was about responsibility, protection, and love. Dai Hao failed all three. From then on, Huo Yuhao's life was one of endless struggle. He grew up on the streets, enduring hunger and cold, relying only on his own wits and willpower. He didn't have a father's protection or a family support. Every success he achieved, every battle he won, was the result of his own suffering and perseverance. When he entered Shrek Academy, he did so not as the son of a duke, but as a nameless orphan determined to prove his worth to the world. His pride was forged in hardship, his self-respect tempered by endless trials. That pride became his armor and his curse. When Huo Yuhao rose to fame and power, he was no longer the weak child of the past. He became one of the greatest soul masters of his generation, a hero respected by nations. But in his heart, the wound of his origins never fully healed. He wanted the world to remember him not as Dai Hao's son, but as Huo Yuhao, the man who built everything with his own hands. So when the time came to face Dai Hao, to finally tell him the truth, Yuhao hesitated. If he confessed before leaving, others might believe that he sought to use his father's influence, that all his glory and strength were borrowed from the Duke's power. To a proud man like Huo Yuhao, that would be unbearable. His accomplishments, his honor, his name, they were his alone. He didn't want pity, nor did he want validation through blood ties. What he wanted was independence, to live and die by his own choices, unchained by the name of Dai. Yet pride was only one part of the truth. The deeper reason lay in his emotions, the conflicting, tormenting feelings that tore at his heart. On one side was hatred, the burning anger of a child abandoned and a mother betrayed. But on the other side was longing, the unspoken wish for the warmth of a father's love, the desire to hear the word son spoken with affection rather than formality. That contradiction made Huo Yuhao's feelings toward Dai Hao impossibly complex. To meet his father again meant reopening the wounds he had buried for years. It meant facing the ghost of his mother and the pain of all that could have been. He feared that if he revealed the truth, those old wounds would tear open again, leaving him vulnerable in a way he hadn't been in years. And so he chose silence, a silence that spoke louder than words. Instead, he asked Dai Luoli, his younger brother, to deliver the truth in his stead. To outsiders, this might seem like cowardice or avoidance, but in reality, it was one of the most profound decisions of Huo Yuhao's life. Through Dai Luoli, Yuhao could bridge the gap between himself and Dai Hao without directly facing the pain of confrontation. It was a way of saying, "Father, I exist, but I am not ready to face you." Dai Luoli, unlike Yuhao, was innocent of the sins of the past. He had grown up within the mansion but carried none of its cruelty. He was pure-hearted and kind, a symbol of what family could be, if not poisoned by pride and jealousy. Huo Yuhao trusted him, not just as a messenger, but as a brother, one who could carry a truth that he himself could not yet bear to speak aloud. From a narrative perspective, this decision added depth and tension to the story. By allowing Dai Luoli to be the one to reveal the truth, the writers created a moment of emotional suspense, a father's confusion, a brother's mission, and a son's hidden pain converging into one powerful revelation. The audience could feel the weight of unspoken words, the yearning for reconciliation hanging in the air. It showed that sometimes silence can hold more emotion than speech. Moreover, Huo Yuhao's choice also reflected his maturity. He knew that revealing his identity too soon could draw him into dangerous political currents. As the Duke of White Tiger, Dai Hao was deeply entangled in the affairs of the Star Luo Empire. If their relationship were exposed, Yuhao would inevitably be dragged into political and military disputes he wanted no part of. His heart belonged to Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect, places built on ideals, friendship, and freedom, not power struggles. By keeping his identity hidden, Huo Yuhao protected not only himself, but also those he cared about. His silence was not just emotional, it was strategic. It shielded him from manipulation and allowed him to walk his own path without interference. And yet behind all this rationality and restraint, there was something deeply human, the faint, flickering hope that one day Dai Hao might discover the truth and seek him out, not because of obligation, but out of love. That was the silent wish of a son who had lost everything, but still yearned for the warmth of a family. So when Huo Yuhao turned away from the Duke's mansion that day, leaving behind a truth too heavy to voice, it was not an act of rejection. It was an act of preservation, of pride, of pain, and of hope. He walked his path with the same dignity that had carried him from the slums to the peak of the world, bearing the name Huo Yuhao proudly, not as a shadow of the White Tiger Duke's son, but as a legend forged by his own hands. And in the quiet that followed, Dai Hao's world began to tremble. The words delivered by Dai Luoli would pierce his heart like lightning. The realization that the boy he had wronged, the boy he had lost, had been by his side all along, would haunt him for the rest of his days. In that moment, Huo Yuhao's silence spoke more powerfully than any confession. It was the silence of pain, of forgiveness withheld, and of love too complicated to name. In Soul Land 2, the Peerless Tang Sect, this silence became one of the most moving and tragic moments of all, a testament to the fact that sometimes even the strongest hearts are still bound by the ghosts of their past. And so, the story of Huo Yuhao and Dai Hao reminds us that not all truths are meant to be spoken face to face. Some are too heavy, too painful, and too tangled in years of regret to be voiced directly. For Huo Yuhao, silence was not weakness, it was strength born from suffering. He chose to walk forward, carrying both resentment and longing in his heart, proving that even without the light of a father's love, he could still shine brighter than anyone in his generation. Perhaps one day, Dai Hao will finally understand the weight behind his son's silence, that it was not hatred, but a final act of pride and self-protection. This is the tragedy and beauty of Soul Land 2, the Peerless Tang Sect, a story where love and pain coexist, where silence can speak louder than words, and where even broken bonds can leave behind the faint hope of reconciliation. If you enjoyed this story and want to uncover more hidden emotions and untold truths behind the characters of Soul Land 2, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me on this journey through the depths of the Soul Master world. Until next time, this is KSR, and I'll see you in the next story.